Hello. Welcome to tonight's bedtime story by Lucid Tales. I hope your day has been kind and full of love. But whether it has been sweet song or grating jingles for you, it's time to relax now. Find somewhere comfortable, maybe your bed or a favourite armchair, and make sure you're ready for sleep. Let yourself yawn and stretch from your head to your toes, if you have them, and feel the freedom in body, the little loosening that means it's time for bed. Tonight's story is The Emperor and the Nightingale by Hans Christian Andersen. Long ago, there was a mighty emperor whose palace was built of fine, fragile porcelain, standing in the most beautiful garden ever seen. The air was scented with the delicate blossoms that cascaded over the walls and sprung up from the rich, dark earth. Butterflies like jewels fluttered among the gorgeous flowers, and bees hummed, filling the air with their gentle drone and the glimmer of iridescent wings. The gardeners hung tiny silver bells among the stems of the flowers, so that the birds at all times were accompanied with their gentle, tinkling merriment. Beyond the beautiful garden stretched a great, deep forest, all the way to the wide blue sea that sparkled under the sun far away. There, at the edge of the forest, sang a nightingale. It had its home in an ancient and gnarled tree, and every night at sunset the nightingale opened her heart and sang her liquid song so beautifully that even the fishermen stopped to listen, their minds and aching bodies eased by her music. Over the years, many guests visited the mighty palace to see its delicate porcelain walls, its fine treasures, and its beautiful, intricate gardens. But for every visitor who heard the song of the nightingale, the splendour of the palace and its gardens paled in comparison. "It is most wonderful here," they would write in their travel accounts. "Everything in the palace grounds is exquisite, but nothing here can compete with the song of the most incredible bird in the forest nearby." Now the emperor very much enjoyed reading books about his land, especially about the glorious palace of which he was so proud. But when he reached the end of the latest account, he was amazed to read that the writer thought a songbird more beautiful than all of his finery. "What is this nightingale?" he asked his courtiers. "How is it that I have never heard its song when it lives so close and sings so beautifully?" The courtiers had not heard of the nightingale, or her song either. They went through the whole palace, asking porters, gardeners, maids, chefs, all searching for someone who had heard of this melodious bird. Finally, when they were coming to their wits' ends, they found a young maid in the emperor's vast kitchens. "I know the nightingale," said the girl. "I hear her sing whenever I go to visit my mother on the coast. It is not far." And so that very evening the courtiers had the maid lead them to the nightingale's great gnarled tree through the deep green forest. Of course, having lived in the palace for their whole lives, the courtiers had no idea what a nightingale might sound like, or indeed anything else in the woods. As they walked out and away from the palace, down the slender packed earth path toward the shore, they heard a deep booming sound. It was enchanting, in a strange way, and so they all clamoured with excitement. "That must be the famous nightingale. How beautiful it sounds!" The maid stared at them. "No, my lords, my ladies," said the kitchen maid. "That is merely a cow calling to her calf." But soon again the courtiers heard an unfamiliar sound, bright and bubbling and chirping merrily. "That must be the nightingale," they said, rushing forward. "How beautiful!" "No, my lords," said the kitchen maid, "my ladies. That is but a frog calling to her companions across a pond. You see, here we cross a brook." At last, as evening fell, and the pale blue sky turned to dusky twilight, the courtiers heard a sound like no other. A trilling silver ribbon of song that shimmered through the air like a dream. The kitchen maid stopped and pointed toward a great gnarled tree where a small brown bird was singing its heart out. "That is the nightingale." The courtiers were astounded that such a beautiful sound could come from such a drab little bird, but they nonetheless immediately invited her to the palace to sing for the emperor. The little nightingale was amazed by the invitation. Who had heard of a human emperor inviting a bird to his palace? And so she went, flitting from branch to branch as the courtiers made their way back to the palace, leaving the kitchen maid to continue on her journey alone. That night the entire court gathered with the emperor to hear the nightingale sing. They had made for her a golden stand to perch on, and ordered a small bowl of bright berries for her to eat. The nightingale began her song, and before even a minute had passed, the emperor's eyes were wet with tears. He had never heard anything so beautiful. As the song went on, tears rolled down every cheek in the court, as they one and all marvelled at the beauty of the nightingale's voice. After that, the nightingale was made to live in the palace, and given a golden cage and 12 servants of her very own. She had all the berries she could eat, and once a day was allowed out of her cage to fly around the hall or garden for an hour. But a servant kept a tight grip on a silken thread tied to her leg, so that she was never able to fly free. The nightingale still sang, but she began to pine, and her sorrow only made her melancholy song sound sweeter. In time, a gift arrived at the palace for the emperor. A mechanical bird made of gold and silver and set all over with precious jewels. It had a little golden key, and when the emperor wound it, the mechanical bird would sing one of the nightingale's songs, whilst slowly flapping its bright wings and tail. It sang very well, this mechanical bird, and unlike the real nightingale, it sang the same song over and over. The nightingale sang as her heart told her to sing, whether loud or soft, sorrowing or joyful. The emperor's court decided that the jewel-encrusted mechanical bird was far superior to the nightingale and her drab brown, and that her repeated song had an air of reliability and simple pleasure to it. It was not long before the nightingale's keepers grew careless, and her cage one day was left unlocked. The little bird flew out of her cage, out of the window, and back out to her old life in the free forest, back to her beloved old gnarled tree. Sometimes, when the poor folk came into the emperor's court to have their grievances heard, they were permitted to listen a little to the beautiful mechanical bird. And unlike the courtiers, every one of them shook their head and thought privately that it was not as good as the real thing, no matter how pretty the package. A year passed, as years will, and through that entire time the mechanical bird sat in pride of place on a silken cushion by the emperor's left hand. But one day, when the key was turned and the bird wound up in preparation for its nightly performance, it did not sing. The mechanism whirred, but the bird spoke only harsh, grating sounds. It had been made to sing so much it had worn out. The palace watchmaker, a man of great talent and fine fingers, was able to repair the bird, but he warned the emperor that it was unlikely the bird would survive a second repair, or indeed being made to sing any more than once a year. Several years passed, and the bird sang but once in each, and over time the emperor wasted away and became thin and pale. He grew dangerously ill and lay like one dying, languishing in his great bed. Everyone believed he was about to die, and many courtiers began paying court to the man most believed would be the next emperor. One night, at midnight, the emperor awoke in a cold nightmare, and turned slowly to face the mechanical bird sat on his bedside. Perhaps its soothing song could ease his fearful mind and let him sleep. "Sing," he commanded. "Please sing for me." But no matter how he begged, there was no one to wind the beautiful machine, and so it lay there, silent. But wonder of wondrous hearts, suddenly there came a sound from outside the Emperor's window that he had never thought to hear again. The little brown nightingale was sat perched on a branch outside the Emperor's window, singing her little heart out. As her trilling silver song washed over the Emperor in the moonlight, his fevered mind was soothed, and his illness began to creep its way out of his limbs and heart. "Thank you, little bird," he said quietly. "I do not deserve your kindness, or your help, but I am grateful. Won't you come and sing to me in the palace again?" "No, Emperor," said the nightingale, for birds do not fear the strange hierarchies of men. "I will not live in the palace again, not for all the berries in the world. But I will come when I can, of my own free will, and sing here outside your window. I will help you further if you will have it. I will tell you of the minds and hearts of the poor folk in your land, something you cannot see or hear as surrounded as you are by courtiers and sycophants all clamouring for your praise. But you must make me a promise to never tell anyone what I am doing for you." And so the Emperor promised, and fell into a deep, refreshing sleep. The next morning the servants arrived, expecting to find their Emperor dead and cold, and found him instead more alive and joyous than he had been for many months. He took his place once again as Emperor, and ruled for many more years, much more wisely and justly now. But he never told anyone the nightingale's secret, not even until the end of his days. Good night. Sleep well, and I will see you tomorrow for another bedtime story.